I'm Chris Beyer. I'm the executive producer at Inc. Magazine. I'm here with Simon Sinek, a unshakable optimist, an inspirational speaker. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let me ask you a broad question before we get into the nitty-gritty. Why are you an optimist? Why do you choose to see the world that way?
I mean, I don't know if optimists choose to see that way. I think, well, I guess you can choose to be an optimist. It is a point of view that you can take, right? You can look for everything bad in the world and think the world is crashing and it'll never get better. Or you can choose to see the good in people and choose to see the good in the world, and then that's the direction that will follow. You know, I tend to believe that there's no finality in anything. You know, it's not like, you know, even though our lives are finite, life is infinite. You know, life goes on, and for me, the goal is not to produce something that has an endpoint, but to produce something that has momentum that can live on beyond me. And so I choose an optimistic path.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Brandeis University just outside of Boston.
Did you go to grad school?
I have half a law degree.
Yeah, right.
I dropped out of law.
That, yes.
I dropped out of law school.
What prompted you to drop out?
It's not for me, and I knew that it wasn't for me.
Yeah. You knew that it wasn't for you before you even went to law school?
No, I wanted to go.
Yeah.
But once I was there, I realized it wasn't for me, and I figured, why waste the time?
Yeah. So when you dropped out of law school and went into the real world, so to speak, what were the jobs that you were holding before you went off and started your own thing?
I was living in England. I went to law school in England, and I not only made the decision to drop out of law school, I also made the decision to move back to the United States. And I happened to be dating a girl who was studying advertising at Syracuse. And so she got this idea, this bug in my ear about advertising, where I could do business and creative stuff all at the same time.
Interesting.
And so I made the decision to go into advertising, to go into marketing. And so my career started immediately. I started looking for jobs in advertising, and I started in ad agencies.
So most of your wisdom is about how to better live in this corporate world.
Yeah.
How did the corporate world suit you?
You know, I was still an entrepreneurial. I think people misunderstand what the word entrepreneur means. You know, small business owners own small businesses, and entrepreneurs solve problems. And there are many, many entrepreneurs inside corporations.
Yeah.
And not all small business owners are entrepreneurs.
I see.
So an entrepreneur is somebody who's constantly looking for a better way to do something. There's a sort of a mad scientist about them. It's not simply, you know, understanding structure and building business. And that's the way I was in the corporate world, which, you know, depending on my boss, was either welcomed or not.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I used to get in trouble for that's not how we do it around here. And
Really?
I'm like, did I break any rules? They're like, no. I'm like, did I get it done? They're like, yes. I'm like, did I get it done better than you expected? They're like, yes. I'm like, so what exactly is the problem? Wow. You know, so I was that, but I had good relationships. I was very lucky. I had some not so great bosses at the beginning of my career, which was actually great because I learned about the camaraderie of a team. But I had some fantastic bosses middle and later on in my career, which was really great. And a lot of who I've become as a leader was very much shaped by those people.
When did you start developing that first philosophy that you were known for, the golden circle, the concept of the golden circle? When did that realization start to happen?
So I quit the ad business and started my own marketing firm.
Already?
In 2002. And throughout my entire career, I was always fascinated why some advertising or some marketing worked and some didn't. And because having been on the inside, I knew that I could have a brilliant team and we could come up with amazing creative ideas and it would fail, or I could have the same team on a different thing who would come up with equally good ideas and it would succeed. And so I looked at the great marketers, the ones that we admired and the ones that I've written about, you know, your Southwest Airlines, your Apples, the ones that sort of the perennial favorites.
Yeah.
And I recognized that there was a pattern in the way in which they spoke to us. Like I literally could look at their ads and like see that there was an organization, and I wrote it down. And even back then, I called it the Golden Circle. And when I had my own business, it was just basically in PowerPoints to explain why some marketing worked and some marketing didn't. It wasn't.
When you were first talking to a client?
It wasn't a big idea yet. It was simply an organizing principle, how to organize information for marketing. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great
and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else.
So was it you then that decided, I want to share this with as many people as I can, regardless of clients from my advertising agency? Or were people reaching out and saying, hey, can you talk about this outside of your work?
It's like so many of these stories, it sounds like, I was a genius, but it was much more evolutionary than revolutionary, much more organic. I was fascinated by this idea, and it had a profound impact on my own life and my own view of the world. And like anybody, when you read a great book or you see a great movie, you tell your friends to read it or see it. And so I would talk about this thing obsessively because it's like it's like when you find a new song and all you do is listen to that one song.
Oh, I've been there.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just this obsession for this one thing. The difference is it didn't lose steam, and my friends were taking it to heart and were making crazy life changes. Like I had friends quitting jobs and starting businesses once they heard this thing.
Because of a talk you had with them at a bar.
Yeah, and
wow.
and I figured out how to help people find their why, and and my friends would invite me to their homes to share it with their friends. So it all started with me standing in somebody's living room in New York City, like with one of those prepared platters that you get at the supermarket with the celery and the carrots, and like one of those in the middle of the room. And I would talk about the thing called the why, and people would ask me to help them find their one. I used to do it for $100 on the side. It was extremely organic. I talked about it everywhere I went. People would tell people about it. People would ask me to come talk about it. And somebody invited me to come give a talk to a bunch of entrepreneurs. And I said yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what happened when you gave that first talk?
Yeah.
Your first real talk.
Yeah.
Were you like, oh my, maybe this shouldn't just be the side gig?
I didn't know that being a speaker was actually a thing, weirdly.
We're talking 2000-ish?
So I started giving these talks in 2006 because it was my own discovery of my own why that really generated the passion for this idea.
And what was your own why?
To inspire people to do what inspires them, so together each of us can change our world for the better, which continues to be my passion and my drive.
And that has not changed.
You only have one why your whole life.
Yeah.
And the opportunity is to live in balance or out of balance with that why.
I see.
It's not created in the middle of your life, it's created early in your life. And if you can figure out what it is, you can choose to make decisions to bring that why to life, and that's what I've done.
As we're here in this sort of 2006, 2007 area, you have your marketing firm, and you're doing this consultation work, teaching people how to find their why. When did you sort of stop doing the more traditional marketing stuff and just really focus on, this is what I'm doing?
Probably a year-ish after that. It was relatively quickly when I realized I wanted to only spread this message of the why.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure exactly what form it would take, I just knew I wanted to do it. And so managed to back out of my lease. By back out, I meant pay a fine.
Oh my.
I got out of my lease from my office.
Yeah.
And started from scratch because I had this sort of very scientific approach, which is scientific method, which is I had a theory and I wanted to prove the theory, and the best way to prove the theory was to start clean.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I was right. I just thought I had an idea, and I wanted to test it until it would fail, and then I would tweak the idea. And so I kept looking for new opportunities, big companies, small companies, different industries, public companies, private companies, government, military. I just was looking for all the different places that I could try it, waiting for it to fail. And it kept working.
Wow.
So it was really an amazing experience to see this theory just keep working. But I kept the reason, and I was very honest. I was very honest with people. They like, have you worked in politics before? I'm like, nope, never done it. But I want to give it a try and see if this works. It may not, but I was always very honest about what my pursuits were.
Yeah.
And people, again, the early adopters said, well, let's give it a try. So everybody went in with open eyes, me and my clients.
So you continue to do this, and you continue to spread this message, and it kept working. Tell me how you got that TED Talk in 2009.
Well, as I became a champion for this message and a champion for this cause, and it was, and so when you talk about what you believe, people who believe what you believe recommend you or want to introduce you to people.
I see.
And so the more I talked about it, the more somebody would call me and say, hey, this is someone I think you should meet.
Yeah.
And people found me. I don't know, from somebody else.
So you did not seek out, I want to do this for,
No,
okay, yeah.
no. So somebody reached out to me and said, we're doing, they got my name.
Yeah.
And they said, we've heard about you, we've heard your work. We'd like to invite you to do a TEDx talk in Puget Sound in Seattle.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, sounds amazing. TEDx was it was a relatively new thing back then, and it was a big deal. It still had a lot of real sort of gravitas to it, and so I was very excited, and of course said yes to the opportunity.
This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do.
It was a talk I'd been giving for 3 years already. This was in 2009. I'd been giving this talk for 3 years. I knew my stuff inside and out. And so I showed up to give the best talk I could in 18 minutes. For me, the challenge was the 18 minutes, not the talk.
How long is the talk normally?
Oh, it was like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had no idea how to do it in 18 minutes. But I just gave the best talk I could, and they put it on YouTube, and I didn't expect it to get as many views as it did on YouTube, and it did. And in a few months, the TED people put it on mainted.com, and then things went silly.
Wow. Define things went silly.
It went from hundreds of thousands of views to millions of views.
And what happened? Were you ready for the wave to hit? Did you know where you wanted the wave to take you?
Definitely wasn't ready for it because everything was a surprise to me. I only found out that they put it on TED.com the week it happened. Like there was no advance notice. They didn't ask permission. It was like they just did it, and I found out about it.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it would do. It was, again, I was out spreading a message, and it was wonderful for me to have yet another medium to help me spread this message, so I didn't have to be in the room all the time.
Yeah.
What I didn't expect is it would create more demand for me as a speaker. I didn't, and I never set myself on this course to be a public speaker. It's not really a chosen profession. If I never give another speech again, I'd be fine with that. I do it because I believe in the message, and I think it's important to go and preach that message.
I see.
And what the TED Talk gave me was the opportunity to spread that message at vastly greater scale, much bigger audiences.
Yeah.
And that's been a great honor.
Did you ever have moments where you thought, wow, so many people are listening to me, I hope, moments of imposter syndrome, moments where you doubted yourself?
I think I wouldn't call it imposter syndrome. I was more humbled by the whole thing. I would catch myself laughing and giggling at myself, like, I can't believe that they let me in here.
Yeah.
Like, that happened more frequently. I wouldn't call it imposter. It was more like, I think they're idiots because they don't really know that I'm an idiot. It's kind of like Groucho Marx, who said I would never join a club that would have me as a member. There's a little bit of that. It's like, what's wrong with these people that they think that, it's like, that was the only sort of impostery thing that crept in.
Do you still have that?
I do. I'm sort of amazed by it all, and there's a, like when I meet people who I know, there's an author or a celebrity or somebody who I know, like I know your work, you know my work,
Yeah.
It's humbling. It's like people whose books I used to read, when I was in the marketing business, they're friends now. Like, that's weird to me. Like that's very humbling.
Was there any sort of larger flaw that you had to confront about yourself, whether as a leader or just as a human over these last 10 years and rising success?
There's many. The biggest lesson I learned was, thank goodness I learned it pretty early on, which is, and I think a lot of business owners make this mistake, which is because I was the boss, in my own mind.
Yeah.
I thought I had to know all the answers. And if I didn't, I thought I had to pretend that I did. And that's stupid. And what I learned is that just because I may have the top position in the hierarchy, I'm not expected to know everything. And if I pretend to know everything, it diminishes the value of all the great ideas and the great intelligence around me. And when things got difficult, I would never admit it, right? I would just put on a brave face and show up every day. And the biggest lesson I learned was to say, I don't know, I don't understand, or I need help. at any level about any subject.
Yeah.
And amazingly, I was always surrounded by people who wanted to help or who knew answers, but they never offered to help or offer the answers because they didn't think I needed it, because I kept pretending that I knew it all.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that nobody likes a know-it-all. So that was huge for me. And when I was willing to ask for help and accept it when it was offered, and sort of accept the humility of the fact that other people know a lot more about a lot of things than